So welcome everyone to this presentation. In this presentation, we are going to look at how we can plan child protection interventions. We'll look at how you carry out an assessment to understand the child protection needs in the community. And then we shall also look at what are the things that you really need to make sure that are in place in order to really implement, uh, plan, implement, and also evaluate child protection interventions. And we'll also look at the general situation in terms of child protection interventions in the country, South Sudan, and see um, what are the challenges and what is actually being done by the different stakeholders. So it is very important that we really ensure that children are protected and that they are safe in an environment that enables them to achieve their life goals or achieve their potential. So this condition is one that allows them to thrive. Okay, an environment which allows them to socialize, an environment that allows them to learn and develop cognitively and develop psychologically and develop socially and have all these skills that you could wish a responsible citizen should be having. So it is very important to look at what are those things that really put these children at risk uh, to at a risk that damages or harms their physical, psychological, or social well-being. Okay, so we need to identify these risks, these harmful practices, these exposures that really infringe on their rights, and then be able to create that enabling environment. So that's why this becomes an important topic because it allows us to look at child protection in a wider scope, what I can call in a systems approach. Okay, the systems approach allows us to see the different uh, subsystems that have an impact on the well-being of the child, coming from the family where they are coming from, the community, and then at the national level, looking at the policies that safeguard children. So we have a number of different interventions that can be done at the different levels, from families to communities, and then at the national level. Okay, so let's see what we are going to basically discuss. Look at the different interventions that can be implemented uh, um, at different levels, whether at the community, at the school, the family level, at the national level, or even state level. So generally, we can say that South Sudan is still a young nation that gained its independence in 2011 after a long period of war. And because of this war, South Sudan is experiencing a number of challenges to do with the breakdown of government infrastructure or systems, the issues to do with rule of law, issues to do with conflicts, issues to do with the natural calamities. All these um, have an impact on children. Okay, all these have impact on children. Unfortunately, that impact is having a great effect on children. So children fall under the category of vulnerable populations. Currently, of course, we have a number of legal frameworks that are in place to make sure that children are actually protected. Okay, the Constitution, the Child Act, um enshrines the rights of children such that they can actually be protected. Okay, however, it's also very important to note that we have a number of limitations as to to what extent we actually implement these interventions. Um, so the law enforcers, the social workers, the capacity, the resources to be able to do that is also still lacking. But it's also important to recognize that child protection activities lie under the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare. It's the one responsible for making the policies that protect and safeguard children. We also have different actors, the NGOs. UNICEF, particularly, is an important actor in child protection, and other international and local NGOs, including civil society organizations. Um, we also have activities of child protection that are being carried out also by religious entities. So currently, we are having what you can term as relative peace, but of course, there are communal conflicts that happen, cattle raiding that happen. These are usually accompanied by committing child abuses. Okay, abducting of children happens, and it has always been reported. Sexually abusing these children, forceful displacement, and also recruitment of children into armed groups. These are still challenges that actually happen up to today in the country. Um, the displacement of people creates an environment that is not conducive because it increases the likelihood that they can actually be exposed to, let us say, child labor, let us say, sexual abuse, uh, and other abuses that these children go through. Okay, so these displacements that are often caused either by natural calamities like floods or either by intercommunal conflicts are actually worsening the situation to do with the children welfare. But also our communities are also engaged in activities that put children at risk. Okay, child marriage, female genital mutilation. These are also issues that actually need to be addressed in child protection in the country. Okay, so the vulnerability, or let us just look at the term vulnerability, what it actually means. Vulnerability is the likelihood that a child will be exposed to harm or abuse. Okay, so we have children that are particularly susceptible to abuse. These are children who are either separated from their caretakers or their parents, and they're also staying perhaps alone. Or these are children that um, have run from a place of conflict, okay, and they have been separated from their parents. So these migrations, these disasters, these conflicts make them to move. So when they move and they're unaccompanied, actually it places them in a difficult situation where there is no caretaker. And then we have children that have been recruited into armed forces. Okay, these are also susceptible to different abuses, physical, psychological. Trafficked children, children that are forced uh, for uh, forced labor, sexual exploitation, and organ trafficking. Refugees and displaced children, and then children with disabilities. Children with the physical, mental, or sensory disabilities are also at risk. So, what can be done? A number of interventions really can be done to make sure that children are actually protected. These interventions can be done at different levels, at the community level, at, at the national level, uh, in schools and families. Okay, so these interventions are quite many, but it's very important to make sure that all these interventions are interconnected. through collaborative approaches, as we shall look at later on. So at the community level, you can form child protection committees, and then we can carry out awareness campaigns, and then also support families that are really vulnerable, such that children don't end up being abused in terms of exploiting them for child labor. And then we can also establish what we call child-friendly spaces where children feel free to share their experiences. And also this environment can be good for offering psychosocial support to children. Family tracing and reunification for children who have been separated from their caretakers is also very important. And then also providing legal support to children that have been abused. Okay, so these are not the only interventions that can be done. We shall look at some of these in detail in the subsequent slides. Strengthening child protection systems. Making sure that the government officials have the capacity to respond to child protection issues. Okay, so the NGOs, the community members, the social workers, all these may need to gain the expertise in dealing with child protection issues. Community engagement is also very important. Communities usually have their mechanisms of protection. Okay, so we need to make sure that these community child protection mechanisms are strengthened. Okay, and therefore involving community members in discussions when dealing with issues to do with child protection is very important. Advocacy and awareness are also very important in ensuring that children's rights and harmful practices can be children rights are promoted, and harmful practices can be um, advocated against. So it is very important to create child-friendly spaces where children can engage in activities that can promote their development, and also these are areas where psychological support can be offered. Um, it is very important to employ qualified people or social workers to really manage these child-friendly spaces. Okay, it also acts as an avenue where children who are suspected to be abused can be identified, and then they can be handled. So identification of cases of let us say child abuse, and making sure that we address this each individual case to the logical conclusion is what we basically term as case management. So it is very important that we have case managers who can really assess, plan, coordinate services for the vulnerable children that have been identified in the community. And for children that require legal legal support, or support that we cannot really offer, it is very vital that we can refer them. So we have children that can require legal support. We have children that can really require medical support. So it is very important really that these children can still be referred by the case managers. Family strengthening. This is the focus is basically on the family and ensuring that the family environment or the home environment is actually suitable for uh, for the child. Okay, so interventions such as ensuring that parents have the appropriate knowledge about parenting is very important. And for families that are really vulnerable, um, implementing interventions that really assist them or empower them economically, that also becomes a very good intervention. So it is very important that families are strengthened, okay, either through knowledge, either through economic empowerment, and letting them know what what role they actually play in protecting or ensuring the well-being of the child. Gender-based violence uh, has a negative impact on children. So interventions that really prevent and respond to gender-based violence are very important, because usually when you have a child that experiences gender-based violence or witnesses gender-based violence, it is likely that they can actually also participate in gender-based violence in when they actually grow up. So preventing and responding to gender-based violence can be one way of ensuring that the child actually grows up in a friendly environment. Schools where children can actually go and study are very important. It's very vital. Usually in emergencies, this infrastructure is actually broken down. So it is very important to make sure that at least there are temporary structures for which learning can really take place. And this may actually require skilling the teachers to be able to offer child protection services, psychological support, and then also on inclusive education. So like I said earlier on, different communities can adopt different child protection mechanisms. It is very important that as actors, you work to strengthen these mechanisms. Okay, so you can have committees, community committees that protect children, and use community members as advocates for child protection. It's very important to raise awareness about child protection issues. These can have different objectives or aims, but basically, these campaigns are aimed at making sure that community members are actually aware about the child protection issues that we have. Advocating for policies, advocating for laws, and increased funding towards child protection also is very, very key. And to achieve greater impact, it's very important to work with different stakeholders to promote child rights. Working together is very key because you realize that the issue of child protection has many actors from the government side, the NGOs, civil society organizations, community members, religious institutions, and others. They play an important role in uh, ensuring that children are actually well protected. So let's look at if you want to intervene as an organization in child protection, what do you really need to do? Okay, we have looked at all these interventions. If you go on ground, what do you really need to do? The first thing is to understand the local context. And with this, you really need to gather data about the community. You carry out a number of uh, interviews, focus group discussions. You look at case studies to really collect data, comprehensive data about the child protection issues in the community. Look at the risks, vulnerabilities, the protection factors, the stakeholders, the social, cultural, and political environment that actually impact child protection in a given community. So it's very important to gather all this data and really see how you can really respond. This collection of data allows you to know the gaps, the vulnerabilities, the capacity, the policies, the laws, the strength of the actors, the different stakeholders. So the different ways you really can collect all this data. Like I mentioned, interviews, focus group discussions, case studies, desktop review, okay, or desk review. Okay, reviewing reports. It could be project reports. It could be uh, uh, government reports, it could be newspaper reports and things like that. So you do a review of these reports and see and understand the child protection issues in the community. Engaging stakeholders still remains very key. Okay, when you look at the risks that and the threats that children actually are exposed to in that particular community, you look at what are those issues. Is it violence? Is it abuse? Is it exploitation? Is it child labor? Yeah, is it child marriage? Is it armed conflicts? What are those drivers? Okay, so you look at, after looking at the risks, the vulnerability part of the abuses, you also look at the factors that are protective. Okay, the families, the family networks or social networks, the strength of the family structures, the schools, the community. What are those systems that are in place that can safeguard children? Okay, look at the level of service delivery. Okay, so who are those that are providing child protection services? Are they qualified enough? Do they have the qualities? Do they have the skills? What is the nature of the quality of child protection services? What are the gaps? What needs to be addressed? Look at the social, cultural, and community factors that affect child, the child protection. Okay, so these factors are very important because it gives you an idea on what are the underlying causes, what are the immediate causes, and what are the conditions that are making sure that this problem continues to exist. And then do what we call risk mapping and prioritization. You map out the areas with the highest level of vulnerabilities. In emergency situations where, for example, you have a conflict, let us say you also have you have a natural disaster, it is very important that you carry out a rapid assessment to identify the risks and the needs, what needs to be done. And this usually has to be done in order to respond to the immediate needs of the children in that kind of context. It's very important that you choose the appropriate intervention for a particular community that you have really accessed. Okay, so it is very important from the word go to really do an assessment and understand what are the gaps, what are the key stakeholders saying, the community members especially, what are they saying, and then what is your ability to respond. You have the resources, the expertise to respond to in implementing these interventions. So you need to rely on a number of factors uh, to be able to choose the kind of interventions that can be put in place. Okay, so it is also very vital, really, very vital, apart from uh, consulting the different stakeholders, apart from consulting the community members, understanding the social cultural dynamics, all these assessments that you have done, you have collected all this data and known that these are the gaps and this is perhaps how we can respond. It's very, very vital still to consider issues to do with the evidence for why you're actually responding to child protection issues in a particular way. Okay, so you need to have enough evidence. Okay, evidence-based child protection interventions is very important. And then holistic approach, making sure that you don't respond to child protection issues in a silo manner. Okay, you need to have a comprehensive approach touching all the major spheres or dimensions to do with child protection, and then also looking at issues to do with um, what happens if you are not there on ground to implement these child protection issues. So sustainability becomes very important. Capacity building of staff, making sure that the community owns the projects, all these interventions. These are very important, okay, such that really your exit does not mean that the child protection interventions are going to be down. Thank you for listening. That marks the end of this presentation, where we have looked at what interventions can be put in place to ensure that children are protected. Thank you.